What is up, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Not So Stupid podcast. Today's episode, we have a really cool and special guest. Today, we have Aaron Straker joining us on the show. Aaron Straker is a nutrition coach, educator, advocate of being in charge of your own health, and owner and founder of Straker Nutrition Co. The main focus of Straker Nutrition Co. is optimizing your health to the highest degree, which is something we're going to be talking about and really diving into here. And one of the core philosophies that I absolutely love and what got me excited to bring Aaron onto the show was the idea of objective nutrition, of not letting your emotions and feelings kind of cloud what's actually happening in your nutrition journey. Because your feelings, although valid, aren't always accurate or true and indicative of what's actually happening in the world. So when you break free from those emotions, you get a lot more clarity on what's going on in your situation and a lot more clarity on what you need to do to break free from that and get to somewhere else that you want to be. Aaron is also a co-host of the Eat, Train, Prosper podcast with a previous guest as well, Brian Boorstein, which a lot of people enjoyed that podcast episode as well. And I love their podcast. So having Aaron on and having Brian on previously were both great honors. And I'm excited for you guys to listen to this one because I know you're going to get a lot of value on the nutrition and lifestyle side of things to just change your life from now as soon as you're done listening. So I'm going to stop rambling now. So here it is, the interview with Aaron Straker. Okay, Aaron Straker, welcome to the Not So Stupid podcast. How are you doing today, man?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Really excited to have you on. For the people not as familiar with you, why don't you share a little bit about yourself, how you got here, and what you're all about?
Yeah, of course. So my name is Aaron Straker. I operate a nutrition coaching and lifestyle coaching company called Straker Nutrition Company. I got into this pretty much through the opposite side, which is training. So I got into weightlifting and stuff like that for football in high school, and that took me through like college, that sort of thing, and then that took me into CrossFit. I was fortunate to be in, I wouldn't really call it the first wave of CrossFit, but that second wave, like I was introduced in 2009. I had been living in San Diego at the time and really just got caught up in that as someone who is now out of college, looking for something to do, stay active. It was a way to continue to compete. So I went through that, and then that took me into, unfortunately, some injuries, ruptured Achilles tendon, which was a big one. And I was like, well, why are these things happening to me? Like, why is my body falling apart? I'm 24, 25 years old. Mm-hmm. And I'd realized that my nutrition and stuff was really garbage, and everything that, we were getting fed from the CrossFit space of like paleo was kind of just missing the mark for my specific context, right? So the athlete pushing training multiple days per week isn't the same thing as like, the 42-year-old mom returning to training after her latest pregnancy, trying to lose the baby weight type of thing. So there was me, team all, carbs are the devil. And all I need is bacon and black coffee for a training session type thing is completely misses the mark when you are doing highly glycolytic work at high volumes and high frequencies. So with a fresh ruptured Achilles and a cast for the next 4 months, I had a lot of time on my hands, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to make the best of this and just learn some things. So that took me to some of the first RP diet books back in like 2013, 2014, when that first one came out. Some of Lyle McDonald's stuff, his first book on flexible dieting was, like a decade old at that point, but still really new for me in that. And I had realized like all these things that I thought were truths about nutrition were complete contextual mismarks, let's call them that, for me. And then I started realizing that like, I couldn't just sleep 5 hours per night, Thursday through Sunday, and go drink all weekend and then expect to be like, well, why am I not progressing in my strength block? So I realized there's more than just showing up and lifting weights. It's your nutrition, it's your lifestyle, it's your sleep, it's your endocrine function, and all these different things that were completely, foreign to me. And in pursuit of better gym gains, right, and being competitive, I started going deeper on these things and just learning. So it was really just a pure hobby at that point. At the time I was working as a software engineer, and because that's what was my career and what I went to school for. And then through a combination of becoming less interested in continuing that career further and some opportunities, I jumped into helping a friend who had a nutrition coaching company do some real admin type stuff, helping her with some processes. And then through a very unique situation where a very high profile CrossFit athlete posted about her, and overnight 500 applications came in. It transitioned into a bit of a part-time job for me, helping her run her company and then even taking on some very, very low level, like low hanging fruit clientele, which was very new for me and kind of scary,
Yeah.
as a very upfront and honest introvert. It was very, very difficult for me, but I
Hmm.
saw the value there of being able to help people. And that was a new opportunity for me, different than I was getting from my software job. So that kind of rolled into more things as I realized that, hey, I'm actually pretty good at this because it's something I'm interested in. It got more and more of my attention. I went through, got my PN1, and then I rolled that into some other certs and a licensure through NASN. And then in 2018, I decided to take the jump and leave my software career for what I was actually passionate about at the ripe age of 30 years old. And now here we are 4 years later, and things have been absolutely fantastic. And I will never go back.
I love the sound of that. So that's actually really cool. I didn't know you were you said software developer, software engineer.
Software engineer, software developer, same thing.
Yeah, software engineer. So I got my bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering, and so like we kind of had a similar route. What I'm interested to know, like, what kind of got you into software if you weren't interested in it? Was it just like the opportunity of it and it seemed logical to go through, or?
So when people, as a 17, 18-year-old off to college, people are like, well, what are you going to study? And I was like, well, shit, I don't know. Mechanical engineering, right? That sounds cool, right?
Yeah.
These are two cool words. And then through some like weird scheduling stuff, I ended up getting into like a second semester sophomore class as a freshman first semester through like a weird opening. And I
Uh-huh.
actually got to do some like hands-on type cool stuff, not just like a gen ed, and realized I don't like this at all. So I scheduled an appointment with my advisor, and we were like, well, what are some other, potential majors that I can look at? And I was fortunate I went to a really big school, and there
Hmm.
was just like, I don't know, 100 plus majors or something like that. So I was just
Wow.
going down the list, and I'm like, well, I like, computers and that sort of thing. Like maybe I'll go down to this like, IT software thing. So my degree is actually in IT, and then I got into actual software development and writing code through some wrinkles after that. But
Hmm.
really just I needed to make a decision. Here's a list of like 70 decisions I can make. I'm
Right.
18 years old. I'm going to go with this one type
Yeah.
of deal.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure it's still like really helpful in a lot of ways, as well, like in your current life, right?
It's been super helpful. I feel, a lot of people may look at it from like, oh, I don't look at it this way, but people are like, well,
Of
I
course.
wasted all those years doing something. Like I didn't waste anything. I was acquiring skills. I
Hmm.
might not use these super hard technical skills because in like my second year of business, I made a hard deal with myself, like no more writing code. If I need something code written, I'm outsourcing it, because you run into that just because I can doesn't mean I
Right.
should type of deal. But it has been extraordinarily helpful, when it comes to changing business domains or configuring email servers, all that stuff like that. I know like the back of my hand, so that is something that has been very, very beneficial as a solopreneur. Is a lot of these places where people get hung up with technology and stuff, like it's my bread and butter still. So I can do it so, quickly, I should say.
Yeah, no, that's actually really cool and pretty enlightening to kind of go through that transition. And I really love that you don't see it as wasted time or anything like that, because obviously it still provides a lot of value and it paved the way for where you're at right now, too, right?
It did, and it really helped me um, find my specialties with coaching and how I'm sure we'll get into a little bit more around my unique views on using objectivity and helping data, or
Mhm.
sorry, leveraging data to help us make decisions and stuff like that. All comes from my years writing code.
Yeah, dude, that makes it connected a lot of dots for me for how you view things. But before we get into that, I definitely want to go more into your story and see um, other transitions that you kind of went through, because it sounds like you went through what I think a lot of college age men kind of go through of, I'm just trying to be as athletic as I can, but I'm the rules don't apply to me kind of thing, and I can do whatever I want. I don't really need nutrition, or whether it's ignorance or you think you can power through it um, until you knew better. What kind of transition was that like, mentally, shifting from, I gotta actually do this the right way. I can't actually do the things I thought I could anymore. It's not working for me because XYZ. What kind of mental transition was like? Because I'm sure it was kind of difficult to, be honest with yourself in that way.
For me, I feel fortunate that it was kind of at like a low point in my life where I I needed something, I was literally like, for me, like the gym was everything. It was my social structure. It was what I did after work. It
Hmm.
was my hobbies. And then that was like just rug pulled. Like, when you're in a cast to your knee, like you can't, it was my right leg. I couldn't even drive my truck. I was working from home.
Wow.
Like I didn't leave the house type of deal. My friends had to like drop off my groceries and stuff like that. Like I
Wow.
was kind of worthless.
Yeah.
So for me, it was like I just decided, okay, after like 30 days of sitting on the couch playing video games and eating candy, I was like, okay, I'm done feeling sorry for myself. I need to do something about it now.
Yeah.
Um, just decided I was going to learn, and I was like, said, "Go, I'm going to read like 4 books, a book a month over this." And then one of them just like happened to be like a nutrition book because it
Hmm.
kind of like caught my eye, and that was it's just like the realization because for so many people, especially young people, right? And I have some siblings and stuff that are younger in those ages, so I know it still holds true. A lot of your information is like word of mouth, like recycled gym lingo stuff. So people be like, "Oh, you do." This exercise because it hits like your outer triceps or something like that.
Yeah.
And like now that I know, like that's complete bullshit.
Yeah.
But it still gets recycled. So like I was someone, in that getting recycled information type of thing. Like, oh,
Hmm.
no, Gatorade's bad because of like sugar, but we're doing, 100 burpees for time and then deadlifts after. Like in that context, sugar and Gatorade is pretty much a gift from God. You know what I mean? So
Right.
it's just one of those things like you just get these incorrect information recycled, and I found myself in that. And then once I actually read a book by people with PhDs and stuff, I was like, oh my goodness, like these people that I'm getting my information sources from, or sorry, my information from, like are just incorrect or incorrect within the specific context, right? And I
Right.
think that's where the sweet spot really lies.
Hmm. Yeah, I really like that how you're emphasizing context in a lot of this because I think when you talk to the average person or anyone in the gen population, they kind of make things black and white. Like this is true all the time or it's not true all the time, right? This is how it's going to be. How do you, because I'm sure with people that you work with a lot of gen pop people, how do you kind of help them see that, okay, this isn't like bad or good or right or wrong. It's just not optimal for this point in time. What's kind of your perspective in explaining that and showing that, shedding them the light on that perspective?
So I try not to focus on the 80%. Um, and I individualize my coaching. And then another thing that's a little bit different that I do is I have weekly calls with all of my clients. It's like a semi-private, coaching session where I want to use the different periodization phases that different clients are in
Hmm.
as like relevant teaching perspectives. So let's say, I have a call with some of my clients on, and I'll be like talking to client A who is in um, a calorie surplus, right? Our goal is building muscle. And I'm telling him like, hey, let's have some intra workout carbohydrates as like a cluster dextrin, something like that. And then client B will be like, well, Aaron, why does, client A get Gatorade in the middle of his workout and
Hmm.
I don't get any? And I'll be like, oh, client B, because you are in week 12 of a calorie deficit and we need to diet down your carbohydrates so that your
Hmm.
body will, sub or switch and utilize your body fat as a fuel substrate. And we want to maximize the volume of food you can eat. So spending 30 carbohydrates per day on, Gatorade, which is this big,
Right.
is a poor use of your opportunity cost for that we can filled with, 150 grams of sweet potatoes that will actually give you satiety and help you stick to your diet type of thing.
Hmm.
So like the context and the nuance, it's not as easy to talk to Gen Pop or that 80% of that Gen Pop about, but that's not where I focus. I focus on that 20% because that is how you actually, understand nutrition and make, the lasting changes and take it and run with it type of deal once you, cover the bases and have that 80%, up to operating speed type information.
Hmm. So you're, how would you define your 20%? It's the people that are like more willing to learn and are actually like invested in working with you. Is that how you define 20%?
I would say that, yeah, are the people who know that there's like, okay, you have, your 95% of your fitness information, which is just like calorie deficit, train harder. And you're like, well, okay, I've been trying that.
Right.
And then there's people on the outskirts of that who are saying, of course, those are, your minimum buy-ins, but there's more to meets the eye, right?
Hmm.
And the people who are just a little bit more curious for understanding what more there is to it, or the people that want more, right? I have a pretty good physique, I work out, but I want to look great, or I want to be able to understand my own physiology, or be take charge of my own health type of thing. So a lot of the things that I talk about with like blood glucose and
Hmm.
understanding your lab work, getting lab work done, because I don't mean to go off on like too much of a tangent here, but
Go ahead.
far too often, if you get blood work done, if your doctor even suggests you get blood work done, you go in, they order you a basic CBC and lipid panel,
Hmm.
and then your doctor's assistant or the secretary at the office calls you and says, yeah, everything looks good. What the hell does that mean?
Yeah.
Right? That doesn't tell you anything. You don't even get your own results.
Hmm.
But just because you may be in range, meaning you are not far enough out of range for the doctor to prescribe you a medication to sledgehammer you back into range, you could be far from optimal. And depending on the type of person you are, I am trying to convince people to learn more about themselves, because I want to empower people for decades to live a healthy lifestyle, especially as I'm getting a little bit older now. I'm working with clients who are an older population, and it's not just a 26-year-old who wants to be jacked. It's a dad who wants to set a good example for his children, and know that he's teaching them, because as newer parents, right, your children are going to get their information from you, whether you
Hmm.
really realize that or not. So helping you create those habits, it will cascade into the rest of your family, and it becomes more than just the dude who wants to be jacked. It's, hey, you're the the face, the image of a household, and you want your household to be grow up strong, healthy, competent type of deal. And it's taking charge of your own health and understanding that's going to facilitate that from the lead.
Yeah. No, I love that a lot, because at that point it becomes like you are sending information to future generations at the same time, and that's going to have a huge cascading effect. But I really love that, the people you work with it sounds like they have a strong foundation and understanding of nutrition. They don't need to like go through the basics or the nuances and break through any myths or anything like that. They're actually trying to no.
You'd be surprised. I mean, I generally get people who are already invested into the lifestyle,
Okay.
right? So like, hey, I've tracked my macros, or I know left from right, right from wrong. I have my air quotes here because that's
Yeah.
obviously contextually dependent, right? Like we
Hmm.
just talked about with that Gatorade example. But generally, people who are a little bit more into the lifestyle, and now I'm actually beginning to attract more like of newer coaches and stuff like that too, which I love, because I was there at a point too, and I went through those lumps, being like, why isn't this working, or this works for client A, but this doesn't work for client B type of deal. And a lot of your like your L1 nutrition certs and stuff, or your personal training certs, like you're not talking about blood work and
Yeah, no.
lipids and blood glucose and understanding why client A can process 500 grams of carbs per day, but client B, their digestion will bog down and they'll get all bloated and shit like that. So, um, I'm really fortunate to be able to be in that position where I've just been around long enough, I'm old enough, where I've learned, and now I'm helping some of the younger coaches by coaching them and being like, hey, these things that are coming up with you, these will come up with clients. Like, this is how we deal with it type of thing. So, yeah.
Yeah. No, that's really awesome on your part. It's basically another analogy for being the dad in a way, right?
Yeah.
And teaching the younger generation how to, actually advocate for themselves and advocate for their clients so that they can get what they're looking for. I would love, you mentioned blood work a few times. I kind of want to get more of an idea, and I want you to dive deeper if you can, about what you said about getting blood work at a doctor's office, how you're not really getting communicated the information, and how you bridge that gap for them, and what are the most important things you kind of look for the average person. I'm sure, again, it's going to be context dependent because different people are going to have different problems or things to look at, but what are like the big things that are kind of more common, I guess I would say, in the general population?
Yeah. So, I mean, things that would be more common. Again, it depends on context, right? But let's start with like the basics, like your complete blood count and lipids. Those are pretty basic. Like, that's going to be any kind of blood work there. If anything's super far out of range or anything like that, you might want to go deeper and order some more tests. One of the most common things that I will look for and talk about is blood glucose and your insulin sensitivity. And that's going to be a fasting blood glucose test. That's going to be a hemoglobin A1C and fasting insulin. So if you're someone who is losing insulin sensitivity, let's say you've been on like an 8-month gaining period or a dreamer bulk, get huge at all costs type thing, you may likely see that fasting insulin tests start rising, maybe up into the 12s, teens, low 20s. You want to 100% back off there because that's your pancreas pumping out more insulin to deal with all of your bullshit, pretty much, that
Yeah.
you've been doing. So that's one that is like less common that I would recommend looking at. Thyroid is another one. A lot of times, if you go get labs from like your GP, they're just going to order a TSH, and that is just like the tip of the iceberg, right? We want to see T4, free T4, free T3. We want to see any TPO antibodies, especially if you are maybe have some autoimmunity issues or if you are struggling with fat loss. That would be a really, really great place to look as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get into some of the hormones too, like sex hormones, right? We'll speak mostly in the context of males here. That's generally who I work with. Free testosterone, total testosterone. You can even look into some prostate specific antigen type stuff. If you're getting into your like late 30s, mid to late 40s type of thing, that would be important as well.
Mm-hmm.
And some of those are just going to be really helpful markers, depending on which nutrition periodization phase you may be going into. So generally what I like to do is get lab work before starting a fat loss phase with a client, because it sometimes will prevent us from even trying because it will be an uphill battle. So
Mm-hmm.
if, I have a client and they're like, hey, we want to, start fat loss, but we see a serum cortisol is like really, really high. And we see reverse T3, which is another thyroid test I forgot to mention. That can be another indicator that like cortisol is high or stress is high, and then your body's converting, not converting to active thyroid hormone, it's converting to an inactive form. If we
Mm-hmm.
see testosterone's low, maybe hypogonadal or whatever, we know that you're going to catabolize more lean tissue as you diet down than you would if testosterone was higher. We know your recovery aspect from training will be diminished because of that. For some of these things, I'll kind of strongly steer my clients, be like, hey, we can do this. It's going to be really hard on you and you're going to see less progress and your hormones are only going to get worse. And like, those are unfortunate truths that I will guarantee you type of deal.
Mm-hmm.
Or we kick the can, we focus harder on the lifestyle stuff, and we, reverse harder. We dig deeper into where else we can optimize. And then, in 5 months or whatever, 6 months, we go at it again and we kind of just snap our fingers and things just work because we're not fighting our physiology. We have everything in a line, and then you just really pull the calories and you're like, holy shit, it works.
Yeah.
Which it generally does. But oftentimes people are just not, they're under leveraged to start.
Mm-hmm.
And that is really what it comes down to.
Yeah, no, that's definitely very true in a lot of instances, especially I'm assuming, well, I can't assume, I shouldn't say that, but with a lot of people that are trying to lose weight, they've been trying to lose weight for a long period of time. By the time they get professional help from a coach or something, and they're like, all right, I need to diet down and lose weight. And you're like, no, we got to slow down. That's kind of a punch in the face, like, oh man, now I got to wait and be patient and work on this. But, like you said, once you get your health in check and your body is on your team, basically working on your side to help you lose the fat, it takes a little bit of time at the beginning, but it speeds everything up in the following periodization phase, right?
It does. And fortunately, there are signals that we can leverage to know if we're making the right decision or not. So oftentimes
Mm,
when you start that like reversing period, people's hunger increases as you give them more food, right?
mm-hmm,
That's generally a sign that you have not been eating enough. Um, Also, it's hard to say because not everyone responds a little bit differently, but it's not uncommon that as you feed people up and give them more food, they drop body fat and their body weight comes down. Like, oh yeah, check that out. We're getting, systems. I don't want to say back online because that's like an improper context, but we're upregulating metabolic function. We're upregulating endocrine function, and then autonomous body processes consume more energy as we reverse those adaptations that they were forced to take because of the decisions you had made before we were working
mm-hmm,
together, type of deal. So you get some kind of quick wins there, and the client buys in more because some of the things that you have told them are coming true, or more importantly, some of their fears have been squashed because that we're now eating 400 or 500 calories more. They feel better. They're better in the gym. Maybe they have a little bit of fat loss, fortunately as well. I'm like, okay, so we've only done a little bit and we're getting all these positive adaptations. Like, okay, yeah, I see. I'm in. Let's keep going type of deal.
Yeah, they just need to give you a little bit of trust, see the results for themselves, and then it can snowball into something bigger and what they ultimately want in the end.
Right.
Now, I'm gonna branch into now, because I think this is really related to how everything you've mentioned is an objective point of view, right? And you want to focus on objective nutrition as your main thing. I would love if you could dive into what that looks like, what you mean by that, and why you think it's so important in being successful in this process, or at least in how you do it, right?
Yeah. So the real reason I would say is because subjectivity there's just so much room for error in that. And especially when it comes down to quantifying food intake, right? And then quantifying activity, what would be the outtake, I guess, or expenditure is the term that's more commonly used.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a gross, dichotomy between what people think they're eating and what they actually are eating, and then what they think they're expending from a caloric standpoint, from like training and being alive all day, basically, and what they are actually doing. So for us to make quality decisions, we just need better data. So I'm very big on tracking your food. We use Chronometer for that. I've been pro Chronometer for a number of years now because of the objectivity and micronutrient data it gives us, right? No other food tracking application is giving you a full breakdown of your micronutrients. So that is the strong point for Chronometer there. But it really just helps us quantify things and spot trends and stuff, because if we didn't have it, you're going to see your weigh-ins are going to fluctuate wildly, or what you really see is someone's does pretty well throughout the week, and then you get that spike weigh-in on Monday, and they're like, I don't know what happened. I was perfect over the weekend. Like, no, you weren't.
Right.
Like, I'm not going to be a dick, but no, you weren't.
Yeah.
So it just helps us make decisions. And what it does also is it helps then the client over time of tracking their food begin to like paint a better picture in their own mind of, oh, these types of foods have these sorts of macronutrients. So then we kind of slowly over time, by tracking, reframe and reshape how they look at their own nutrition, because now they know, okay, I have what's like a really good example. I have, oatmeal cup from Starbucks that has candied fucking walnuts,
Right.
cranberries, and brown sugar in it. It's 70 grams of carbs. If I have like, rice or a sweet potato, I have 9 times as much volume for an equal caloric content of carbohydrate type of deal. So people start like these light bulb moments will go off, and they realize that like, we don't want to play the calorie game, because you have to intake, or so you have to consider volume and hunger and satiety and all this stuff. Like, we want to play the volume game. And when you play the volume and trying to treat your body good and fill up on whole quality, nutrient dense food sources, a lot of your downstream problems work themselves out. So it's not from like a standpoint that I think every single client needs to track their food intake for the rest of their lives. But if you spend 6 to 8, 12 months, tracking your food intake, you will drastically reframe and reshape how you view foods and look at nutrition, that you can then leverage for years down the line to make sure that you can keep your body weight in a healthy range based on your context, goals, etc. And then when you do want to like lose body fat, maybe you want to gain muscle, move into a performance, phase or something like that, what sorts of foods and what directions to move in that enables you to facilitate that.
No, I love that a lot. I was really excited to kind of talk through this with you, because objectivity as a concept is a huge value in my life. Like, I want to know the objective view of what's happening at all times. I don't want, my biases getting in the way of my decision making, or mostly my decision making, really, or my understanding of any kind of different situation. And I think the way you kind of brought it up and tied it with nutrition is really cool, because a lot of people can feel a certain way about something. I have clients that come to me and they're like, I've tried everything. I always do this. I always do that. And they might remember the instances where they do that and put them in a spotlight and kind of brush everything else aside and not realize what they're missing. But when you kind of see everything all at once laid out on the table, you can have a better understanding, be more honest with yourself, really, is how I look at it, and kind of take you from point A to point B. Yeah, I didn't really have a question or anything to lead off with that. I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, what I was going to say, of course I run into the same situations, right? Because that's what happens
Right.
when you work with clients. But human psychology is very finicky and weird and misleading. And the beauty about numbers is like, you can't argue numbers. Like the numbers are numbers. And that's why we run like averages and stuff. And be like, oh, well, I'm feeling like it's not working. Like that's something that they'll say. And then we're just like, okay, well, for the past 4 months, or sorry, not 4 months, for the past
Yeah.
like 4 weeks, we're averaging a new low week over week. So you can feel however you want, but it's working because the numbers
Right.
are telling us it's working. So I'm like, unless you're lying to me and giving me false, reported weigh-ins and food logs and stuff like that, it's working.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. That's definitely a thing I hear all the time on a month-to-month basis. But then it's like you look at the measurements, you look at the weigh-ins, like, oh, you know what? You're right. I just didn't, because day to day, nothing really changes. There's nothing significant changing day to day, but it's what adds up in the long run that really makes it more impactful when you see that.
100%.
Yeah, for sure. Now, rolling off of that, you mentioned this isn't something you necessarily need to do in the long term, but if you want to be very specific about a goal, it's helpful to be more objective about that goal. You mentioned a few different kind of goals, and I'd love to hear kind of your approach in starting with that, in preparation of hitting that goal for performance and fat loss specifically, and then what it's like after you hit that goal. What's the conversation like, and where do you take people from there?
So first, I want to generally gauge people's commitment to that goal, or the seriousness of that goal, right?
Mm,
Because a lot of times people will say one thing, but they really kind of mean something else. So just one thing that I'm very, very big on is just trying to create a very open and clear communication channel, right? I don't want to
yeah.
sugarcoat anything. I also, don't want to like butter anyone up to not hurt their feelings or like lead them on. I'm like, well, sometimes I'll be honest. I'm like, that's an unreasonable goal in that time frame, unless you're willing to basically move in with me and we're just gonna eat what I eat every single day, and that's what we're gonna do, right? Unless
Right.
you give me that level of control, unfortunately, that's not reasonable right now. So seeing what they want, right? And then seeing, okay, what is the timeline on that? Is that appropriate? Do we have a wedding in there? Do we have a bachelor party? We need to take, inventory of that and realize those are going to be probably weeks that are a setback from like a fat loss type of thing, and just
Right.
get really, really realistic and honest, because far too often people think they're going to move mountains in 6 weeks, and then in reality in 6 weeks you're just hitting a consistency that you needed to start hitting in week 1 type of
Hmm.
deal. So really just being open and honest and setting expectations, right? And then they're managing expectations, I should say, because a lot of people, because of marketing and Instagram BS and all these things, just have unrealistic expectations within a given time frame.
Hmm.
And so starting there, and then with a goal, right? Well, as we near that goal, I'll start the conversation. Okay, like we'll probably be there within 2 to 4 weeks. Like, what are we looking at after? Is it return back to like lifestyle, nutrition type of thing? If
Hmm.
it's a fat loss thing, I'm beginning to be much, much more clear about the recovery diet.
Mm.
In that, okay, so we have achieved goal, right? We have reached it. If you want to stay there, and lock that goal in, we need to spend X weeks being just as diligent as we go through our recovery diet. Because if you do not, you will lose some of your, progress you just made type of deal. So that's a
Hmm.
newer one that I've become like much, much more like vocal and hard about, because I really want to think like, okay, people think like, okay, it's a 8-week diet or a 12-week diet, and then it's like back to before. But no, it's like it's an 8 to 12 week diet with another probably 8 weeks of due diligence as you recover type of thing, if you really want to lock that in type of deal. So I'm beginning to forget what the original question was. Remind me.
No, that you were heading in the right direction with that. So you got most of it covered. It's like how you basically transition through that. I really like that you brought up the recovery diet because that was kind of where I was hoping to go with this. And most people think about the diet that they're doing because that's obviously like the cool, sexy thing that you want to get done and losing weight and doing a diet, whatever. But the diet after the diet, is going to dictate whether you have to do this whole diet process again or if you're going to, maintain this and keep it up for the long run. What does a typical so you mentioned I actually want to dig deeper on this. You mentioned blood work before and after a fat loss phase, right?
Mhm.
What do you go through a recovery diet to improve certain markers, and that's how you dictate that, hey, this is done and we're good now? Or is it sometimes that? I'm guessing it's sometimes that, or is it all the time that? What is your perspective?
Yeah, well, the last thing you want to do is get blood work done at the end of a diet, unless you want to scare yourself or scare your significant other or something like that, because it's not going
Right.
to look good, right?
Yeah.
Specifically, hormones. Your TSH on your thyroid is going to be up. It's going to be up higher. Your active thyroid hormone is going to be down lower. Your
Hmm.
total testosterone is going to be down lower. You may wonder why your sex drive has disappeared the last 5 or 6 weeks. And that is why, right? It is a evolutionary. What's the word I'm looking for? Not longevity, but like a biological
It's for
safety
reproduction purposes.
mechanism. Yeah,
Yeah.
because let's face it, a diet is literally controlled starvation, and from an
Hmm.
evolutionary standpoint, that is a terrible time to conceive a new life when resources are scarce to preserve the life that's already existing type of deal.
Right.
So you may notice a lot of these things, and then there's prime opportunity to recover from them, and sex hormones is one of the um, biggest ones. So that is why we go through the recovery diet to upregulate endocrine function, to upregulate metabolic function, because let's face it, at the end of a diet you're vulnerable. Your your um, your 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 maintenance calories have slid down, right? Because that's a dynamic target. One, you
Hmm.
weigh less, and two, some of those autonomous bodily processes, like I talked about, are consuming less energy because they've gone through adaptations in order to do so. They've gotten thrifty, and we want to return that and have your body then be a little bit more inefficient with its calories, right? So
Hmm.
often we talk about efficiency is so much, but the last thing you want your metabolism to be is efficient. You want it to be inefficient because you want your body to be pissing out calories left and right so that you can maintain your body weight on 3,500 calories instead of 2,500 calories, right? Because then you can just literally eat more food. It is
Hmm.
a net positive except for your grocery bill, basically.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't realize that or think, okay, like diet's over, I can go back to, but you're vulnerable. And even if you're
Hmm.
somewhat, educated and understand maintenance calories, and if you finish a diet at, let's say 1,900 calories, and your maintenance calories before were like 2,700 or something like that, they realistically could be two, three, 100 less, depends. And if you just jump back to what you were before, like you're gonna put some fat back on pretty quickly.
Hmm.
And will that recover your endocrine function and stuff much quicker? Yes. But then that's going to come with some body fat accumulation and that sort of thing. So I can't answer this question for everyone. It's going to be a little bit contextually dependent, but
Of course.
generally I will take the slower route and know that, yeah, I might be doing a little bit of harm, quote unquote, to endocrine or sexual function type of thing in the short
Hmm.
term. Eventually it'll get restored, but then I get to keep all my fat loss.
Right.
And, I know those things will happen, and that's generally what I take. And it's taking the slow road is almost always going to be more beneficial. Like for 95% of use cases, we don't have a hard timeline. And unless you're in like a weight, a sport where you have like weight, to make weight,
Like weigh-ins. Yeah.
weigh-ins. Yeah. So I can't think of the word I'm looking for, like BJJ or like,
Yeah.
an Olympic weightlifting competition or something like that. Like most of us don't have actual hard timelines.
Hmm.
So it's taking it slower is going to be, you are able to maintain more of the, fat loss or gains that you made. And it's more realistic in the long term anyway.
Yeah. So then to kind of clarify what I was asking at first, you take blood work before you start the fat loss phase. you go through a period of the recovery diet and then take blood work at that point again, kind of see, hey, are we all good now, or should we keep going a little bit? Is that a more clear-cut process or not so much?
Not so much. So it can vary a little bit depending on
Okay.
how fast or slow you go with that recovery diet, right? If
Hmm.
you go slower, I mean, I generally recommend people give it about like 6 to 8 weeks of increasing calories, like week over week, and then you
Hmm.
can kind of see. But generally, if you are starting a fat loss phase, like after a gaining phase that you like really did your due diligence and pushed calories up and stuff, like let's face it, you're going to have some blood markers that are a little bit off, maybe some of that fasting glucose or lipids or something like that, just from so much food, right, to begin
Hmm.
with. And oftentimes then you will see is some of that blood work looks better at the recovery diet phase once you're ending that, because you have reduced body fat, right? Cardiovascular function is probably better because you would maybe have done some extra cardiovascular work for the purpose of caloric expenditure throughout your fat loss phase and that
Hmm.
sort of thing. So that's generally about the best time or generally about where blood work may look the best, because you're lean, right? You've been doing cardio and now you've been reversing recovering with, still eating a lot of whole quality nutrient dense food sources. Haven't been incorporating as much lower quality foods or anything like that yet. So it's kind of like a perfect balance of the two kind of different, you know,
Yeah.
um, trajectories intersecting type of deal.
Yeah, kind of like in the same way of, like you said, if you take it at the end of the fat loss phase, it's going to look terrible. If you do this post fat loss phase, it's going to look amazing because of everything that you led up to this point.
Yeah.
You recently did uh, a diet phase, a fat loss phase, right? I don't remember how long it was. What has, if you want to go deeper into, the details of it, I'd like to know the recovery aspect of it for you to this point, and like what that's looked like for you and how you've been feeling. And yeah, just like your personal experience doing it, with yourself.
So I love experimenting on myself, but I should provide the like caveat asterisk here is like
Yeah.
as much as I do enjoy it, like this is also my job, my career.
Hmm.
So I lose some of Aaron Straker in Straker Nutrition Company type of deal. Do you know what do you know what I mean by that? So like there might be times where I would tell like a client, like, hey, we have
Oh.
some vacation or trip or something like that. Like, let's be a little bit more relaxed. Like, let's have fun
Hmm.
type of deal. But me, I'm like, it's not just my diet, it's the diet and then the information that I gain that I can then use with my clients to make it better for them. So I would like sacrifice, I guess,
Right.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, you
Um,
won't follow all the rules you give other people just to
yeah,
try things
because
out, right?
it's like I stand more to gain than just Aaron Straker losing fat. I gain knowledge. I gain, an N of one, an experiment for me to, invalidate or potentially validate for me to then use with my clientele type of deal. So it's just a
Right.
little bit of the outcome has different meaning, I should say.
Yeah.
So it was actually I wrapped up end of July, early August with my dieting, and then have been reversing after that. It went really well. I mean, it was honestly the easiest diet I'd ever done. Fortunately, I started from the highest intake I was ever, at from a diet. We started at like 4,200 calories or something like that.
Hmm.
Carbs were at like 600 on training days. So
Right.
at that point, I was happy to start dieting just because I was so sick of eating food.
Yeah.
Um,
Man.
so it was very successful. I started at like 207. I ended at I saw like 189 on the scale once or
Hmm.
twice. So like 17 pounds, whatever that is, like that,
Yeah.
17, 18 pounds. Did over 17 weeks. So pretty much a pound a week. Again, taking things slow. It was very, very easy. I was eating a lot of vegetables at the end of it, which is kind of this interesting thing because dieting, especially in today's landscape of social media and stuff, is often looked at like negative or like frowned upon. But
Right.
in order to be successful with it, you generally have to eat like really high quality foods because you don't have any other fucking choice if you want to be
Yeah.
successful with it. So, I mean, towards the end there, I was doing like 600 grams of vegetables every single
Man.
day.
Wow.
It's a pound and a half of just vegetables, you know?
That's
So
crazy.
I was
Yeah.
doing a lot of stir fry, and at that point, you're like, I kind of begin to like it because I reframe my mindset of like, I'm eating all of this quality food. Like I was just pissing through bags of stir fry vegetables and really just eating a lot of vegetables, a lot of berries, micronutrient dense fruits, because that's what you need to do to like check all of your boxes from a health and minerals and vitamin standpoint, and then still be able to do this fat loss thing. So pretty easy for me there, and then went through the recovery diet. By the end, yes, I could tell my sex drive had diminished by a lot, and I knew that would happen. You know,
Hmm.
after you've been around for a while, you just know you pay to play the game type of deal.
Right.
Definitely got the leanest I ever was, and it was pretty fun to see. Got some dexes throughout to really get some extra data. Just to again, I'm really big on that objective data.
Hmm.
DEXA scan is really fantastic for that, and then went through the reverse, and then I'd had some lingering digestive things that came with a lot of the travel and stuff, because I've been living in a bunch of different countries over the last handful of years and
Hmm.
contracted bacterial infections in every single one except
Man.
Singapore. So that had kind of run its head, and then with the end of with me on the with my gaining phase that I had been in the year before when we were living in Mexico, just kind of came to a head. I'm pushing in a ton of carbohydrate, right? And that provides a lot of opportunity for bacteria to ferment or sorry, for the carbohydrate to ferment any kind of, bad gut bugs to feed on that. So I just, it was time. I talked to my coach. I was like, I need to fix my stomach type of thing, because
Hmm.
foods that were generally safe foods had started to become non-safe foods. So like my protein powder that I had been using for like literally 3 years, all of a sudden I couldn't digest it anymore.
Mm.
Oats, which had been a staple in my life for like many years, all of a sudden I couldn't digest them anymore. So I was like, it's time.
Hmm.
Uh, so I'm basically, that was like 8 weeks then. So that was like right after we had gotten calories up to a decent point. We shifted a lot of the carbohydrate over to fats for, to not have as much prevalence for the or potential for the carbohydrate to ferment, and
Hmm.
started working that. And I'm just now kind of wrapping up some of that and introducing some foods again and stuff like that. So
How's the reintroduction been? Is it going as planned? Are things still bothering you, or
So, I
any?
mean, there's things like oats are still kind of really hit or miss.
Mm.
So I just remove them. It is what it is. It could be to a shifting of how oats are often processed in facilities with like some cross contamination type stuff. So
Hmm.
it could be a little bit of that. I'm not overly concerned because I also do a lot of like cream of rice or cream of buckwheat, and
Hmm.
those kind of check the box. I'm like, it's a fluffy type grain that I eat with breakfast and some cinnamon and fruit. It doesn't have to be oats. It can be cream of rice, cream of buckwheat. Like it checks the box for me there.
Right.
And then the first, because I was traveling last week for the N1, I didn't want to like introduce a new food with all the travel. So it will be
Right.
like basically Sunday, Monday when I introduce a new one.
Hmm.
And that will probably either be blackberries first or bananas. I haven't decided
Okay.
yet.
Interesting. Interesting. That's so recently, like over Thanksgiving week, I traveled to Peru and I ended up getting salmonella at that point. And I was in the hospital for like 3 days in Peru, and it was a rough way to end the trip. But since then, the week afterwards, I had definitely had trouble digesting bell peppers, bananas, and grapes for some reason. Those I was a little surprised about, but those like stuck out as the most difficult to digest. It's been getting better the past few days, but man, that really hits you hard. I don't know if that was one of the places you were at and you got a
Yep.
bacteria. Really?
Got sick in Peru. Yep. It was a very uncomfortable flight home and time
Man,
spent at the airport.
yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah, it was.
Had
How did you know it was salmonella?
I went to the hospital and they diagnosed it. They tested my
Oh,
stool and everything. Yeah,
okay, in Peru.
yeah,
Yeah, mine was. I was literally like it was the day I was leaving. I was like, okay, I'm gonna grab just a little bit of food and head to the airport. And that meal did it. And then that ride
really.
to the airport, I was like,
Damn.
something's wrong. Something's really wrong. Yeah, it was
Oh man,
awful.
that timing is terrible to have that be. You had to sit next to the bathroom, I'm sure, in the plane, and always have it. Mm.
Fortunately, on the plane, I just like I had probably like 2.5 hours before my flight, So
Okay.
I did what I needed to do
Yeah.
inside the airport, and then just nothing went in my body, like not a drop of
Didn't
water,
take a
nothing. And
chance.
I was like, I'm just wait until I get back to Colombia, and I'm just hoping for the best.
Yeah, man. It was I don't know what other experiences you had, but like that first day where I started feeling it, I just thought it was like regular food poisoning. I couldn't even digest the water. Like I drink small cup of water, need the bathroom right away. Basically, never catching up to hydrate myself, which is why I needed to go to the hospital to get an IV because I was extremely dehydrated by that point and feeling a lot better now. But I think uh, like I said, those few, the bell peppers, the bananas, and grapes still bothering me. You kind of like connected something in my head to experiment, eliminate for a little bit, and work on um, repopulating a popular gut microbiome.
That's exactly what I was going to say. That's probably what I would recommend doing, is just trying to get like or what you can do, right, is what I would do is hit PubMed and look
Hmm.
up specific probiotic strains that have proven to be or have evidence, right, from different research, published research, to help repopulate your gut microbiome, specifically after salmonella,
Right.
because there's probably specific strains that would be more beneficial than just buying like a random probiotic or whatever, and then it can help you
Right.
target a little bit better from what the research says.
No, for sure. That's a great idea. I'm gonna write that down. Thanks for that.
Of course.
Okay, nice. Now we were on a topic. We were talking about your diet, and I want to ask, oh, with the DEXA scans, what did you find with your diet? Because you said it was the easiest diet that you had. Was it pretty much all fat loss? Were you able to maintain a good majority of your muscle, or was it kind of, was it what you had hoped you would see from a DEXA before and after?
Yeah, so unfortunately, I didn't when I started the diet in March, or no, the end of March. So like literally like the week before April, I started it. I
Hmm.
didn't get a DEXA until like the first week of May. So I had like a 4-week period where I started the diet without the
Hmm.
DEXA.
Okay.
And then when I got the DEXA in May, body fat percentage was like 11 something. Um, and I had 173.2 or 4, pounds of lean body mass, right?
Okay.
So then I went through the diet. And then when I ended the diet, I got another DEXA, and I was 8.8% body fat. So it's definitely the leanest I've
Nice.
probably ever been. But my lean body mass had dropped to like 170 point something. So I'd lost like 3 pounds of lean body mass.
Hmm.
And then fortunately they had a pretty cool deal at the DEXA place the second time. Like, oh, you can buy an extra one for like an extra $20. I was like, yeah, I'll take that.
Nice. Yeah.
And then I had this idea, I was like, oh, I'm just going to get that extra DEXA done at the end of my reverse. So once
Hmm.
calories are back up near, maintenance calories, I'll go get another one and see. So I did that. And what was really cool is I had gotten leaner even with the recovery diet. So I was
Wow.
8.2% when I got it the second time. But I had restored almost 100% of that lean body mass that I had lost in the later
Wow.
phases of my diet. So, I mean, that really, like right there, that is the like nail in the coffin with the recovery diet. Is you can, if you take things slow, if you're still super, super diligent, you can return calories back up to where hunger isn't an issue or anything like that. You can maintain pretty much all of your fat loss, or even slightly net a little bit more, but return some of that lean body mass. And I did my due diligence. All the DEXAs were fasted first thing in the morning. So I wasn't like, one was after 2 meals, one was after one,
Right.
like everything was, um,
The variables were controlled.
I controlled as many variables as I could. And like the DEX is kind of the gold standard, but it's not perfect, right? It says it right on the front. Anything but fat mass will be counted as lean body mass. So if you load a bunch of carbohydrate the night before, let's
Right.
say you go in, right, you're planning it, you do 600 grams of carbs the day before, and then you eat twice before you go in. Like you can probably, skew your results positively by adding 2.5, 3 pounds of lean body mass just
Right.
by, loading glycogen and shoving a bunch of food into your gut contents
Yeah.
before you go in and test. Yeah. So it's not perfect. You have to control some of the variables yourself.
Yeah. But of course, you uh, are your most prized experiment. So I'm sure you took every precaution you could with that.
Best I could. Yeah.
Yeah, nice. Okay, so we are coming to the end of our time. I do want to be respectful of the time slot we set here. I want to thank you for coming on and like sharing all the information that you shared. Very helpful for me as well as everyone listening. I'm sure for people that want to see more about Aaron Straker and Straker Nutrition Co., where can they find you?
Yep. So you can go to strakernutritionco.com. That's my website there. You can also find me on Instagram at Aaron_Straker. And then I also co-host a weekly podcast with my friend Brian Borstein that is called Eat, Train, Prosper. And you can find us on YouTube as well as wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Nice. Yeah, all of those are going to be linked in the show notes. Definitely recommend Eat, Train, Prosper if you are deeper in understanding fitness and nutrition. They really get into all the nuances, and they have great nerdy discussions that I love to listen into. And now, last question for you before I let you go. This is the Not So Stupid podcast. We do like to focus on simplicity in achieving a happier, healthier life. I would love to know what your simple tip is for anyone listening that they could do immediately after listening to the show that isn't walking to dramatically improve their life.
Okay, here we go. 4 meals per day. One meal can be semi-snack, like a protein shake or something like that. The structure of each meal is a primary protein source. I'm sorry, bacon is not a primary protein source. A starchy carbohydrate or fruit and some vegetables. If you're someone who doesn't want to track your food or anything and you just follow that basic recipe for success, I guarantee you things will improve.
Nice. I love that. Simple, easy to set up. Next meal, they could definitely do that. I love it. That was a great one. Thank you, Aaron, again for coming on the show. And thank you, everyone, for listening. Make sure to check out Aaron at all of the links that I posted down below. And we will see you guys on the next episode.
Thank you for having me.